for you again. This is from the the New York Times, and it says another man who said I can't breathe died in custody. An autopsy calls it homicide. Manuel Ellis of Tacoma, Washington, died in part as a result of how he was restrained, according to the medical examiner, who concluded that his death was a homicide. And this is a photo of Manuel Ellis, who died in police custody in March in Tacoma, Washington. For some reason, this just passed through. Nobody really talked about it, and I'm going to make a video on it. This article is also done by Mike Baker, and it says Seattle, a black man who called out "I can't breathe" before dying in police custody in Tacoma, Washington, was killed as a result of oxygen deprivation and a physical restraint, and that was used on his, according to the details of the medical examiner report released on Wednesday. Pierce County Examiner's Office concluded that the death of the man, Manuel Ellis, age 33, was homicide. Investigators with the Pierce County Sheriff's Department were in the process of preparing a report about the March death, which occurred shortly after an arrest by an officer from the Tacoma Police Department, said the sheriff's spokesman, Ed Toya. The information is all being put together, Detective Toya said. We expect presented to the prosecutor at the end of the week or early next week. Mr. Ellis' sister, Moet Carter Nixon, said for actions to be brought accountability in the death and further scrutiny of both police department practices and how the investigation into his death has been handled. There's a lot of questions that still need to be answered, Ms. Carter Nixon said. Mr. Ellis died from respiratory arrest, hypoxia, and physical restraint, according to the medical examiner's office. The report was listed as I cannot pronounce that, so I do apologize. And heart disease as a contributing factor. Police officers encountered Mr. Ellis, a musician and father of two from Tacoma, on the night of March 3rd as they were stopped at an intersection. They saw him banging on the window of another vehicle, Detective Toner said. Mr. Ellis approached the officers, Detective Toya said, and then threw an officer to the ground when the officer got out of his vehicle. The two officers and the two backup officers who joined them, two of them white, one black, and one Asian, handcuffed. Oh, man. Mr. Ellis was physically restrained as he continued to be combative, the Tacoma Police Department said in a statement on Wednesday. Detective Toya said he did not know all of the details on the restraint the officers used. They were not wearing body cameras. Why? But said he did not believe they used a chokehold or a knee on Mr. Ellis' neck. Now, how can you say that and you don't know? You just said you don't know all the details So how can you say that? You're basically just going off the word of whoever you spoke to. So that's trashed. They rolled him over on his side after he called out, "I can't breathe." The main reason why he was restrained was so he wouldn't hurt himself or them. Detective Toya said as soon as he said he couldn't breathe, they requested medical aid. Detective Toya said that the call for aid came 4 minutes after the police encountered Mr. Ellis. Mr. Ellis was still breathing when medical personnel arrived. Detective Toya said he was removed from handcuffs while personnel worked on him for about 40 minutes. Detective Toya said he was then pronounced dead. Family members said Mr. Ellis was the father of an 11-year-old son and an 18-month-old daughter. He was a talented musician at his church. Miss Carter Mixon said Mr. Ellis was like a father figure to her boys, coaching them on things like how to handle themselves, to keep safe in the world of racial injustices. My heart literally hurts, she said. It's painful. My brother was my best friend. On Wednesday night, she and others held a vigil in Tacoma. Mr. Brian G., a close friend of Mr. Ellis, said that the two were usually spoke several times a day, and that Ellis had video chatted him 2 hours before his death. He had been excited about a church service he had attended and proud of how he played drums during the service, Mr. G recalled. He said it would be uncharacteristic of Mr. Ellis to act in a violent way described by police. He was living in a clean and sober house, and he was getting his life back together, he said. He was always uplifting, Mr. G said. He was always on the up and up about taking care of people. The death comes as protesters have spread around the nation over the case of George Floyd, a black man who died in custody of the Minneapolis Police Department last week. Minnesota's officials have charged all four officers in the case, including Derek Chavez, who kept his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck for nearly 9 minutes during the arrest. Forensics experts who conducted a private autopsy for Mr. Floyd's family concluded that another officer's knee on Mr. Floyd's back contributed to making it possible for his lungs to take in sufficient air. Made it impossible for his lungs to take in sufficient air. Mayor Victoria W. of Tacoma on Wednesday said that she would take appropriate steps based on the findings of the sheriff's investigation. We will learn the results of that investigation even as our country reels from the recent killing of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, and too many others, Ms. Woodard said. Governor J.I. Isley of Washington said the issue was a top priority for him. We will be pushing to make sure there is a full and complete investigation of that incident, Miss Osley said. I apologize if I butchered her name, but there you go. Another black man taken out due to excessive force, and his brain was deprived of the very precious oxygen that we all need and we all breathe, and that, helps us to sustain life. Again, Emmanuel Ellis, a young brother that has been lost. I will continue to keep update on this story as I've done many other stories. And it's just a sad thing to see, again, even during the midst of this protest, even through the midst of the countless of other people that have been slain by police officers around the country. This still continues to happen. This still continues to be a thing. And the question is, when will it stop? When will the police officers finally realize that this will not be beneficial to them? I do hope and pray with my heart of hearts that every person that has struck down a man or a woman unjustly and wrong in these cases, that they are prosecuted to the fullest extent and that they receive the appropriate, and I do mean appropriate. Don't be afraid to go over and add a little bit of extra time onto their racket. You hear what I'm saying to you? I just hope that they are prosecuted and that they receive the maximum penalty for their actions, because there's no way that this should still be going on and taking place in our communities all over and across the United States. They're not going to stop until people are start to be held accountable. They're not going to, lay off of the brutal tactics until they start prosecuting these people. These people need to be prosecuted at the end of the day. No questions asked. Prosecute them as you would prosecute any private citizen that lives, any citizen that lives in this country. That's what needs to happen. So, with that being said, unfortunately, this has happened again, and I would like to hear your thoughts on it. My prayers and condolences go out to the Ellis family, all the people that loved him, his children. It's just terrible and heartbreaking. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Don't forget to comment underneath of this video. Please sound off, and I'll talk to you guys later.